What is going on, fellow gamers? Today is Sunday. I hope you guys are having a lazy, laid-back Sunday, but you know your boy out here still has to work right after this video. But let's move along with why you guys came here. Looking back at the history of PlayStation controllers, PlayStation's first controller was a simple one. It had the D-pad, the now widely known triangle, X, square, and circle buttons, and two shoulder buttons at each end of the controller. PlayStation's next controller was the dual analog controller. The difference here was the addition of more precise movement via the two joysticks that we are accustomed to today. Players were able to activate it via the analog button at the center. So for everybody there dropping that meme not knowing what the analog button is, here is your answer. So that analog button was there. If the game supported it, you could turn it on and use those two sticks. There is also a single rumble engine in the controller, but that was unreliable. The dual analog controller didn't survive long. The next controller to take over was the first DualShock controller. This had everything previously mentioned with the addition of two dual rumble engines. Jumping over to the PS2, we had the DualShock 2 controller, which is just like the DualShock 1 controller with the addition of pressure sensitivity added to the face buttons. Now comes the hilarious boomerang controller that was originally planned for the PS3, which was Sony's biggest change in its controller design history, but it was scrapped for a more traditional design when the PS3 launched. Now with the PS3 launch, we got the 6-axis controller. It was very similar to previous designs of the controller, but the analog button was removed for the home button. The controller also added Bluetooth support, and the controller also removed rumble in favor of motion control functionality, which made fans unhappy. The 6-axis controller was updated to the DualShock 3. This controller crammed in the motion tech of the 6-axis controller along with rumble features, which made fans happy. Moving on from the PlayStation 3 era, with the PlayStation 4, we got the DualShock 4, which was the biggest redesign for the controller line. It brought a lot with it to the table. The controller has a built-in 2-point capacitive touchpad on the front of the controller, which can also be clicked. Top of the gamepad features a light bar that illuminates in different colors, which can be used to identify players by matching the colors of the characters they are controlling in a game, or to provide enhanced feedback or immersion by changing patterns or colors in reaction to gameplay. So like if you're dying in a game, the color turns red. It was also used for motion tracking. The controller also includes a headphone jack and a speaker for additional sound feedback to increase immersion. It also removed the start and select buttons, which I miss, for the share and option buttons. Now looking at the PlayStation Move controller, it comes in two parts, the main controller and the nav controller, but essentially includes all of the traditional buttons. It also has the move button, which is essentially the accept button, haptic feedback, an accelerometer, a magnometer, and the bulb at the top that all assist with motion capture via the PlayStation camera. Now with a bit of PlayStation controller history out there, we can now look at the new controller, which recently had patents that surfaced, and the Reddit community have quickly dived into what it could mean. For the new controller, which is still in patent phase and may never see the light of day, but if it does, it could probably drop with the next PlayStation console and the next PlayStation VR. So looking at the controller, this is some information the Reddit thread was able to piece together, since the original patent was in Japanese and the patent document was, when translated, can be a bit confusing at parts, but here's what we have. Tracking will be done on the front and side of the controller to replace the light bulb used on the current PlayStation Move controller. The controller will also have finger tracking, and how supposedly it's going to be done is that the controller will have multiple sensors throughout it that emit light, and this will detect distance from your finger and where it is to the controller. But let's look at a direct quote from the patent. For the direct quote, bear with me while I read this. The optical sensors LS1 to LS5 detect the positions of the corresponding fingers. Each of the optical sensors LS1 to LS5 emits the detection light to the outside and outputs the amount of detection light reflected by the finger to be detected to the controller unit. Based on this light amount, the controller unit analyzes and specifies the position of the finger to be detected. So essentially, to sum this all up, it's finger tracking via light emission. Now for the next part, this is probably the most interesting part of this patent. The handle of the controller, which also has finger tracking, changes in diameter to provide tactical feedback to make it feel more like you're holding the object or doing the action. It could sense you squeezing instead of pressing a button to hold an object like how the current PlayStation Move controller is. So this part of the controller can widen and contract to make it feel like you're holding the object. Now looking at some of the other parts, the strap band is there to assist with changes in diameter so you don't drop it, so essentially it's just a strap. The buttons are triggers from what the patent says, so this could be the traditional X, circle, square, and triangle buttons. The center is a joystick. There's also a hole at the top to emit sound. Now looking at this, from what I've read, this does not sound like something that's going to come anytime soon, and since it's in the patent phase, it's definitely not coming anytime soon, if at all. But if you want more information on it, I have the Reddit link down below and also the patent links down below, and you can go look into those further and maybe come back here, let me know if I missed something or correct me if I read something wrong. That'd be really appreciated because I want to know more about the controller. It's just there's a lot to dive into and to take in, and you already know I have to work after this, but if you have the time, check it out. Let me know what you think. If you do, comment down below, it'll really help. But if you guys did enjoy this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to the page if you're new. I got a video every other day except days where there's something really interesting, and I'll just post a video on that day. But I'll check you guys out on the next one.